it takes so much more resource and creativity and innovation to reuse wastage products. The bigger brands are kind of greenwashing in a way. It's really not acceptable, and it makes it harder for us as well. So although me on my own with a brand, it doesn't make as much of a difference as when I'm teamed up with everybody else within this space.
Welcome to Let's Talk Upcycling, our weekly podcast discussing all things sustainability and upcycling. Today we have Esther Knight, the founder of Fanfare Label, joining us from the UK. With over a decade of experience as a buyer for renowned fashion brands, including Vivienne, Westwood, Esther witnessed the industry's unsustainable practices firsthand. Determined to drive change, she launched Fanfare Label, a pioneering circular fashion brand. Esther's commitment to sustainability has earned her recognition from prestigious publications like Forbes and Drapers, solidifying her status as a leader in the sustainable fashion movement. Let's explore Fanfare Label's vision with Esther Knight, championing fair fashion through responsible practices. Welcome, Esther. We're so happy to have you on our podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to get into the conversation.
So, transitioning from a long career as a buyer in the fashion industry to founding Fanfare Label, what was the pivotal moment that sparked this significant career shift for you?
Well, I think it was over a good few years, to be honest. I started to look into sustainability around 10 to 15 years ago, so way before it was a buzzword. Really, it was because I was seeing firsthand the practices within the fashion industry from a supplier point of view, seeing pressure on suppliers, seeing a race to the bottom on cost, and penalizing the suppliers for every little thing, that I really started to question that there must be a better way to do business. And so I started to look into sustainable fashion around then.
Right. And how then did it lead to Fanfare Label for you over the course of, say, the decade?
Yeah, so I first started trying to change from within. I remember pitching sustainability to one of the brands that I worked for well over a decade ago, and I said sustainability is going to be the next biggest thing. Customers are going to care where and how their clothes are made, and we need to start investing in our supply chains now in order to make that happen, because it's very, very complex and fashion is ever changing. And then when I moved to Vivienne Westwood, I learned more about the environment and the sheer amount of waste within the fashion industry, and obviously all the other climate problems that fashion is responsible for. So it was there that I got a full rounded picture, a 360 approach to sustainability. And I thought, well, not everyone can afford Vivienne Westwood and Stella McCartney, and actually I wanted to try and make sustainability a bit more accessible. I know that sustainability has its price tag, and it is more expensive, but I wanted to offer something that was a bit more accessible than the designer brands I was seeing at the time. And we started with denim. We started upcycling and really tackling that wastage head on, and that's where it all began.
Lovely. And where did you source your first set of denim jeans from?
So all wastage from recycling plants, from vintage wholesalers, from charity shops, anywhere secondhand, and where items were going to be thrown away. And we started doing our first sampling, our first upcycling. We launched it in a pop-up shop in 2019, and our jeans went straight away. We had other items alongside our denim. It wasn't that we were a denim brand. We just focused on upcycling and using sustainable fabrics, and also fabrics made from other recycled materials. But it was our denim that was really, really popular. So it was just me at the beginning, and then I started to invest more in denim, and that's how we've come to where we are today. Everyone loves our designs. The fact that we incorporate lots of different recyclability into the denim, there's lots of opportunities, such a durable fabric, so much you can do with denim. So we just expanded that collection.
And who is actually making the garments? Where is your, who's sort of producing the garments?
For our denim collections, they're a lot more complicated. A lot of resource goes into them, and they need particular innovation. For example, we use a lot of laser processing on our denim to avoid chemicals and water and over water production. So the UK doesn't really have those facilities to do that. So we get that our denim manufactured in Portugal, and then everything else is made in the UK. So all of our upcycling happens in the UK, and all of our linen production and everything else. Our decoration of our jeans, it all happens in the UK, and we use a mixture of local seamstresses that are self-employed to small-scale factories that really value empowerment and growth, and we're all growing together. And yeah,
That's lovely that you're reviving almost those communities who would possibly, who didn't have the kind of work that they had maybe, a couple of decades ago. Um, what challenges do you face in your business? I mean, do you feel like design is a challenge because the kind of materials that you receive are limited in terms of quantity or in terms of, say colors, etc., or the number that you can produce? Where do you feel, do you see challenges within your the
yeah,
brand?
exactly that. I think everything takes longer and has a lot more work involved. So people think because you're using recycled or wastage clothing or textiles, it might mean that it's cheaper because you're getting it for cheap because you're working with recycling plants. But that's absolutely not the case. It takes so much more resource and creativity and innovation to reuse wastage products. We've got to get them to the point where they look new again, and that takes a lot of design work. It takes a lot of development, and so much more time goes into the development of upcycling pieces than it does running a new production line. It's brilliant, but it's what I describe the world as slow fashion is, because it takes longer to make, more you get more heart and soul into it, and hopefully people cherish the item for longer. And we're back to that mentality of not over consuming, but we're considering the product, and then people are considering the purchase and enjoying the product from there. So that's the mentality of what slow fashion is all about, I think. I think another challenge of us is obviously competition. We've got a lot of brands watching what us smaller brands do within the space. We're driving the innovation. We're driving the innovation within the denim space. And there's a lot of brands that like to watch that and implement it as well. So I think that keeping an eye on, obviously collectively, we want a more sustainable, considered future. That is really, really important to us. But we really want to avoid the bigger brands are kind of well, like greenwashing in a way. It's really not acceptable, and it makes it harder for us as well.
So when you're saying that that the bigger brands kind of identify that this is a product that the customer is interested in, how do you then communicate the difference to a customer who might not know that this is it to them it looks the same, that they're in terms of design, but how do you communicate to them in terms of this is from made in a slow manner, and hence every sort of part of the supply chain has been paid a fair price, and has not been has it's from coming from a place of more mindful production, as against from a fast fashion brand. How are you communicating that to your customer?
So it is very difficult. We do that through our website, and we have a transparency section on our website. So if a customer wants to know more about a product, they can go on that individual product, and at the bottom, there's drop down boxes of where the journey that product's gone on. So the fabric that's involved, where it's been shipped from, the factory information, and how it's been made. And so I think transparency is incredibly important, because it just just means that our job's equally important as a brand that is focused on recyclability and circularity, that we try and help our customer understand, because it's so complicated and there's so many mixed messages out there.
That's lovely to hear. Uh, let's talk about a little about the consumption of, say, the fast fashion products that we have. How can consumers become more aware of the implications of their low cost purchases, particularly concerning the conditions under which cheap clothing is produced?
Mm-hmm. So I think that yeah, it's one of the first places really to tackle in terms of one of the biggest problems. It's it's really tricky knowing where to turn, but I would say it comes down to that education piece first of all. So looking at great resources like Fashion Revolution and Love Not Landfill is another one, particularly focused on the waste. But then there's two particular films that really sum it up for me, and that's the True Cost documentary and also Fashion Reimagined. And by watching both of those films, customers can see how much goes into fashion items and the sheer amount of resource from people and the environment to create something that you might think is quite simple in your wardrobe is quite shocking for people that don't work in the fashion industry. And also it's a way of, it's an encouraging and inspiring and not making people feel guilty, because I wouldn't have known this if I didn't work in the fashion industry, and it's okay to learn and it's okay not to know these things. So I would start off with those two documentaries because they really sum up why we need urgent change and how much goes into product, so that you can see that that cheap item, there's no possible way that we can produce items for that cost, and no one has suffered, or the environment hasn't suffered in that supply chain.
And if we talk about how do we make our clothes last longer, do you have any practical tips of how you think that people can actually make their clothes last longer?
Yes. So I think, well, it starts from the purchase. Obviously, the clothes that you already have in your wardrobe, it's really important to keep hold of those. But it starts with the purchase of buying quality and not quantity. And this is where it really is really important. I used to work for Barber, and Barber jackets had this great mentality of, you buy a Barber jacket and that jacket is for life. You get it repaired, you get it repurposed, and you often pass it on at the end. And every time it's repaired and repurposed, you value it more and you cherish it more, and it's your jacket you've had for decades. This is the mentality of buying quality and not quantity. Buying a really good pair of jeans lasts so much longer, and therefore you don't need to throw it away at the end. We don't need to wash clothing as much as we do. For example, you're actually not even meant to wash denim. You're meant to hang it out and spot clean it and hang it out to get the fresh air. So really reducing that wash, staying away from synthetic fibers, and repairing, fixing, upcycling things that you're bored of. We offer a service in our store that you can upcycle a pair of jeans with us. If you're bored of the pairs of jeans in your wardrobe and you want to revamp it, we can decorate it for you and make it relevant again. And it's just finding those companies. There's a brilliant company called The Seam that you can do that with as well, but with more garments. It's just about finding those things and getting a bit creative with your garment, but most importantly, not throwing things away.
What has been the most rewarding aspect for you pursuing a path of fair fashion for Fanfare Label as a brand?
Oh, there's so many different rewarding aspects. I think that in terms of really making a difference in the fashion industry. So it may seem that like there's a lot of people, myself included, that are doing things within this community of ethical and sustainable fashion, and it may seem like from the outside that everyone's doing a little bit. But that little bit is all getting added together and putting pressure on these big brands. I mean, there's just been an article released that Shein have made a loss recently, and it's because of the pressure of a more sustainable focus mindset of consumers. So I think the most rewarding thing is being part of this movement. So although me on my own with a brand, it doesn't make as much of a difference as when I'm teamed up with everybody else within this space that we've spoken about already.
You were accepted into London Fashion Week as well. Could you describe what that opportunity meant for a brand like yours in terms of raising awareness about positive fashion?
We're one of their designers and we're part of their scheme, and we get a lot of help and mentorship from London Fashion Week. We're also one of their designers that they showcase for sustainability, so they've got a part on their website that shows all the sustainable brands. And a big achievement of mine is once being next to Vivienne Westwood, where I used to work, Fanfare next to Vivienne Westwood on the same platform, which was really, really great.
Tell me also, have you been able to measure the impact in terms of maybe the numbers of how much denim have you actually rescued, or how much in terms of materials have you been able to kind of bring to, a new life?
Yes, so we have collected all that data, and we have done since the beginning. So we know how much we've got. We're working with a company at the moment to go through that data and form it into metrics. So that is actually something exciting that's coming out in 2024.
That's great. I think that because there's, like we also spoke about the greenwashing that actually happens in today's landscape, it's so important to actually talk numbers beyond all the promises that, we're talking about. I think that's great. And it's very exciting that you're already working on that.
Yes, yes. Everything takes a bit of time. Like being B Corp certified, it's just a mammoth task. It would take one employee a full-time role for like 6 months to become B Corp certified. You have to wait until you've got these resources as a small brand. Now that we've been going a few years, we're able to do that, and so we're really looking forward to getting those sustainability metrics in.
Great. So thank you so much, Esther. There's so much that I learned from this conversation as well. And I think that's part of the reason that I love doing this, is because literally there's so much that I can learn from every brand. So thank you so much for taking the time out and having this conversation with us today.
No problem. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and I've really appreciated it. Thank you.